All right, folks, welcome to our DEI meeting for January 14th. Thank you all for coming. Action items, normally we'd have approval of the minutes, but in the agenda, unfortunately, the October minutes were included, not the November, so we've already approved those, so there's no action on the minutes at this point in time. Okay, just wanted to put that on your information. Moving to item number 3 on our agenda, our action items, and we'll start with DEI in action with Leah before she has to move on, and no reception with her Verizon phone at this point in time, so I think she's occupied at the moment.
Hello, thank you. Good evening, everyone. So for DI in action, lots been going on.
We only see your shoulder, Leah, just in case you're wondering if you wanted us to see you. We only see
I know what it seems like I see my whole self here. I don't know.
Okay.
Is that
That's fine.
better? Okay. So, sorry about that.
Right.
So in the elementary schools, Derek and I, we joined the equity meetings this past 2 months, and Westmere, they have their upcoming cultural snack chat, China edition, and the president of the Chinese Community Center will be presenting in February, so we're really excited for that. GES and Pine Bush, so Gildan Elementary and Pine Bush are really going strong with their book study, and we're going to keep on talking how to have race conversations in the elementary classroom. Altamont Elementary held an assembly focusing on kindness when we got back from the holiday break. Mr. Wolf, he read The Crayon Box that talked, and it prompts themes of diversity, cooperation, acceptance, and each student and adult at Altamont will be creating their own crayon. Will be placed on a wall with lines from the book. We are like a box of crayons, each of us unique, and when we get together the picture is complete. So when you walk into Altamont, you're going to see everyone's creations. It's a really fun way to build community there. And Linwood Elementary we're collaborating with the students from Student Voice. So I don't know if we might hear more about that later, but we've been working with Educate to Empower, who organize and host the STOP conference. And we have students from both the high school and the middle school attending the STOP conference this Friday. STOP conference is Students Together Opposing Prejudice. And we've been having Guilderland students join that for the past couple of years. So they're facilitating a program for the DEI Student Voice Group in March, and then those students will then share their learning with a group of Linwood Elementary students. So looking forward to that in the spring. In the middle school, I loved being able to see that FMS had their annual cereal box challenge. Saw that the school donated 1,369 boxes of cereal to the Guilderland Food Pantry, which is amazing, and always love seeing that event. Derek and I, we also presented today in a CI session for FMS. The topic was on revisiting the culture responsive sustaining education framework, and during that time we also shared a spreadsheet with a list of upcoming DEI focused related PD opportunities for teachers, including some in-person gatherings as well as several virtual options. And that's a document that that we have shared with all of the principals, who can then share it out with their DEI committee members or their equity committee members, and anyone else who would like to get some PD opportunities. Let's see, sorry about the noise. Sorry. That's okay, boys. At the high school. Yes, my apologies. My children are now here. Okay. Derek and I, we brought, hold on one second. Sorry, my apologies. We were able to bring high school students to the second session of Alavega Student Voices at the Capital Region BOCES. Again, Friday, there's going to be more students going to the STOP conference. We were able to attend a Black Student Union meeting. And I'm actually working with a couple of high school English teachers and author Brendan Kiley on a panel proposal a decade later, why All-American Boys still matters in the classroom, for this year's NCTE conference. So this past November, I went to the conference to represent Guilderland at the NCTE conference. I was able to present 3 panels, hosted 2 events as the co-chair of the Asian American Caucus, and through that, able to secure some virtual author visits. One from Stan Yan, who is an award-winning first-generation American-born Chinese writer and illustrator, and also Byron Graves, who is from the Lakota tribe. So really excited for some of these things that are happening. And I think that's it. Mr. Westbrook, if there's anything that I missed, let me know. Oh, the 2 of us, we also facilitated another meeting for the Capital Region Global Majority Educators Affinity Group. So that just happened last week too. So yeah, if there's any questions, let me know.
Anyone have any questions for Leah? All right, seeing none. Thank you, Leah. Moving on to part 2, reports of subcommittees, communications and community engagement. I know I was not at our last meeting, so if one of the members that was present has anything to report out for that combined meeting.
Well, we didn't break up into groups because there were so few of us, so we just kind of stayed together and had a conversation. So that was pretty much it. I think there were maybe 7 of us or something. There was just a lot going on that night in the district, so it was hard to come.
Okay.
Yes, so research was alongside them. We did a lot of talking about knowing who our constituents were, and some references were made to with some tools that we put up that I attached to the committee description resources links to Guilderland's comprehensive plan update and Guilderland's demographic and growth analysis for the last 10 years. There's a good reference tool to look at how Guilderland has changed over the years, and what gives some background to some of the demographics and how we've evolved as a community, and where some of those issues might be for us to attack. So that was helpful. We discussed a lot that had to do with supporting students and the climate survey conversation, I think, linked to a whole bunch of issues about supporting students and how we approach certain issues, and whether we felt comfortable discussing them as a group in public forums and or private forums and things of that nature. So it was a very fruitful discussion, but one that was, like you said, a small group attended, and we sort of talked about some of the research issues and some of the issues regarding communications.
Okay. Thank you very much. Student voice subcommittees.
I can speak for FMS. I don't think there's any students on. Hi, I'm Jody Cahill. I am one of the teachers who works with our FMS student voice committee, if you haven't met me or if you don't know my face. But we had an exciting couple of months the past few months. As I previously mentioned, our students kind of wanted to showcase all of the different holidays that have been celebrated or that are celebrated by our student population at FMS. So they administered a survey to the entire FMS population. And we collected all of that data about the different holidays that are celebrated. And there were many that the adults in the room didn't know about, that the kids in the room didn't know about, that some kids knew about and they were able to tell other kids about. But we spent a good amount of time, I would say in December, doing a lot of research and learning about the different holidays. And that all culminated into a slideshow that kind of just cycled through on repeat. That was up during lunches just to give visibility to it. And then what was really cool is that Mike Laster gave our group the opportunity to present that slideshow at a staff meeting. So 6 brave middle schoolers got up in front of the entire FMS staff, which was amazing. They were passing a microphone around, and they educated the entire staff on all of the work that they had done. So not only did they get all of the praise in the moment, but it was super meaningful to, have staff reach out to us and say, could we please have access to those slides? We would love to use them as a resource. And getting to communicate that feedback to our students just really helped them to know how meaningful the work is that they're doing. They felt super validated, which is awesome. So moving forward, like Leah mentioned, we're going to the STOP conference. I'm bringing 2 7th graders, and then we'll be joining Derek with a few high schoolers as well. So we're looking forward to that. And then I think actually tomorrow afternoon, we're having our first steering committee of the month. We're meeting. So I'm really excited to see what our 8th graders kind of want to spearhead next, where we kind of are just wrapped up the project that we've been working on all year. So we'll see what comes.
All right. Very nice. Thank you. Our high school student voice.
All right. I'm not sure if any students are on that were there online, but the high school student voice committee, again, the STOP conference is coming up Friday, which a number of them will be attending. We have 3 initiatives that the students were working on. One that is coming up in February on the 25th, which is our DEI student breakfast. The students are putting together a guest speaker. Well, they have a guest speaker, and Dr. Hernandez she is a parent in the district. Actually, she's affiliated with the STOP conference. She's the host of the STOP conference. The students really enjoyed her last year, and they brought her back. They also have a Jeopardy game that they're working on to talk about what DEI is and what it isn't, and be able to have a fun and informative discussion that will be rich. I think the students are planning is going really well, and they seem to be on top of things. So we're looking forward to a pretty nice event. There's also the RACS initiative. Is Annika online? Maybe she can talk to that.
Yeah, I can talk a little bit about RACS. So for one of our ideas in RACS, which is Random Acts of Kindness, we wanted to do Just Dance in March, like in the middle of any block during school, because during March, that's often when kids get burnt out. So we're trying to make people more happy, I guess. And then for the cultural fair, which is in May, I believe, we decided that instead of writing down information for each country to get more engagement from students, we're going to do stickers this year. So it's the kids go around to each country, they'll get a sticker, and at the end there'll be a raffle. And we have another initiative for teachers. And so basically in the middle school, the students could nominate a teacher for being kind and showing P2 traits. So we wanted to do something similar in the high school to show our appreciation. So kids will be voting on teachers, and they'll be crowned around June for kind of funny stuff, like the funniest teacher, the one who will make you smile the most, and stuff like that.
Definitely. The February initiative is a video as well, where students will be asked during lunch. They'll be setting up a camera, and they'll be asking students basically about their why. What gets you out of bed in the morning and makes you want to come to school? What makes you care, about your education, about being here? And hopefully we'll get some really great responses, and we'll be sharing that video with the community. Our communications department and theater, Mr. Maycock, is helping us make sure that the video production is done well, and they'll be helping us edit the material as well. The last initiative they have is the anti-hate rally and Unity Week. That has been a tradition here for the last 5 years. That was initiated by some students at the school. And this year is the first year where there are no students directly connected with that original group. So it's a pivotal year, and to see how the students now are going to interpret that event and how they want to express themselves and tell their story and bring the students together in the now. So it's going to be an interesting time planning that event, and students are actively on that initiative. And we had some new students come in this week to join us, and we have some other initiatives in discussion that we're going to see what the end of the year may hold, or what may be pushed to next year. One of which is looking to assist with transfer students who come in 9th and 10th grade, and trying to develop a student-based program that will help them feel more connected to the school. But those are some of the things that the students were doing. They're very active, very busy, and there's a lot of good hum of good ideas going around the room.
Yes, Tara, a question? You're muted. You're mute. There you go.
Is there a date for the anti-hate rally yet?
Actually, not right now, Tara.
Okay.
The students just reached out to me to sit down and take a look at the calendar.
Okay. All right. Great. Thank you.
The cultural fair, I was just looking at it, it's the Thursday before spring recess. So I think it's April 2nd.
Cool.
Okay. Great. Thank you.
Excellent.
Thank you. Anything else on that report, Derek? Or are you all set?
All set.
All righty. Moving on to number 3, I'm actually going to turn it back over to Derek. He did email us, but the learning component for tonight is a discussion we're going to have. So I'll turn it back over to Derek.
Definitely. This discussion question really grew out of a couple of discussions, obviously our steering committee, and actually it was an extension of some of the discussions we had in a small group in our last subcommittee meeting as well in December. And the question was, what impact do you see on students, teachers, and staff in our district who are increasingly advocating for and supporting underrepresented students in our community? And then secondarily is, are there any supports we should be giving to them? So I wanted to take part 1 of the question. If you're seeing students or teachers or staff in our district who are advocating for and supporting underrepresented students, what are you seeing? Are there any students who want to talk about the impact on themselves?
We had a quiet group tonight. Holy cow.
Definitely.
So what type of impact are you thinking, or was part of this original conversation, for those that are advocating for the underrepresented groups?
Well, a lot of people, students who feel that they need to advocate on behalf of their underrepresented communities, often some feel and on the positive side, feel a sense of empowerment and agency because they're finding their voice and they're developing leadership skills. They're developing relationships with our administrators in the building, by and large, and some of our more progressive teachers. And that way they're developing a stronger sense of belonging and, doing better in school. However, on the other side, some of our students, may feel an unspoken obligation to educate their peers on their culture. And, when they speak, feel like they have to be the representative of their particular group. And that can lead to distraction and sometimes exhaustion on the side of the students. Students can become easily hypervigilant, meaning that they are become extra sensitive to microaggressions. In fact, I think we have some specific examples, which I won't go into tonight, but where students have, reacted to perceived microaggressions and wonder what, try to feel like that impacted their sense of belonging in the opposite way. And now they feel like they don't have a sense of belonging at the school, or they have to be on their guard all the time to guard against microaggressions happening in the hallways and name calling and things of that nature. So I think there's both sides of that coin that we have to watch out for students. They don't always know where to go for assistance or know where their trusted adult is. When they do, they get supported, but if they don't, then they don't know how to react sometimes. So they may need some encouragement. On the faculty and staff side, some professionals feel fulfilled and a deeper connection to being an educator because they are helping students that they see marginalized succeed, and it's fulfilling professionally for them. But sometimes people can take home those experiences of their students and the stresses that they're going through and, feel an obligation to solve these problems or address these problems. And that can call almost like a secondary traumatic stress, that they're taking on the stress of the students and bringing it home. And it can cause people to feel isolated or be afraid that they'll be in conflict in the school. So they can either be silent on issues that they feel like they should speak out about, and they have that internal dialogue, and then they feel guilty about not speaking out. So there's a growing sense of isolation that is also, happening in silence as well. So these things can go positively and they can go negatively on that side as well. So I was wondering, Nina had her hand up, so go ahead, Nina.
Yeah, no, I think this is a good question to ask. And yeah, I definitely think that there are students that would fall into that category who feel that way. I think, we're living in a time where people are definitely feeling, given climate in general, that there's judgment or preconceived notions that are, whether or not it's implicit or deliberate, there's bias that exists. So I think it's something that it's definitely continues to be my why to the question that was mentioned before. So the reason why we do what we do, right? And I think, to me, I want to loop in the climate survey to that, because I feel like from the standpoint of there are, sure, there's students and faculty and community members who have articulated that exact sentiment and concern. And I know for a fact that there are students in the building that have and do feel that way. I could obviously speak to the fact that the anti-Semitism that exists, but I'm sure it's other groups as well that have felt that way. But there's definitely a reluctance to, I know some Jewish students who have felt that they have to kind of automatically prove that they are open to everybody because there is that assumption made. But I know that that's something that kids have expressed to me, how they feel. So I think that, I'm sure there's other groups as well, like I said, who have similar feelings. But speaking very openly on this, I think it's a topic that we do need to continue to be aware of, and not to mention the climate we're looking in terms of many of our students who might be afraid to be who they are based on events that are happening in our cities currently, right? So I think that we as educators need to continue to provide that safe place for all kids And that's something that I think our faculty does a good job at. So, but it's hard to really know because a lot of kids are silent to what you said before and are afraid. Heard quotes made about silence, like silence is the next worst thing to hate, that is to be feared, because if you're silent, then you perpetuate the problem, right? But who's being silent? Is it the person who's afraid, or is it the people that can be advocates who are silent, right? That's the question, where the silence originates from. I think for me, I would find, and I haven't been able to get to the research committee meetings. I know it's tricky based on scheduling, but I feel that coming from a subcommittee member on research, I would really feel it helpful to take a look at that climate survey, because I think that might help to give some insight to these exact scenarios that you're alluding to, which I agree do exist.
Jody.
Nina, thank you for saying what you said about teachers. I was actually going to kind of jump off of that idea about creating that safe space for students. So I am in a unique position where I work on a team at FMS that deals with our ENL population, English as a new language. And when I saw this question come through, I just immediately thought of those students, because it's a population that is growing faster than education can keep up with. So I'm not expecting anyone to have any answers on like the best ways to support them or anything, but it's just something that I find myself like constantly, and I know so many teachers in our building are just constantly trying to figure out what to do and to do right by these students and to make them feel safe and make them feel as though they can learn and all those things. But I actually bring up this population because I had a positive to share, if that's okay. So we recently had a new student join us, and they do not speak any English. And it was really cool to see that immediately all of our native English speakers pull up their Chromebooks and they log onto Google Translate, and they immediately just start talking to the student, making her feel welcome. So I just think that we're really lucky to have a community where that is the norm. I think it would be kind of, honestly, people would think it would be weird if we weren't interacting with this student. So it's kind of a really cool culture. I know that culture's been part of the conversation for a long time, to, have this population be just enveloped in the larger culture. And yeah.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing.
Definitely. William.
Yeah, so I just sort of wanted to speak on my experience a little bit when talking about the impacts of advocation, because as a member of GHS's alliance with a new round of leadership implemented this year, I think I've overall been seeing a positive for people advocating, because building community is something I and many others enjoy doing. And so when we see these issues for students who feel like they can't be themselves, I think it's really just because we're struggling to build a larger school community, which is why usually clubs stick to representing their own groups that they represent. But I think if we can put more into inter-club connections to build a larger, more connected community, then we can be a lot better about representing everyone in the school.
Yeah, and speaking with some of the students, and they responded to some of the things that the school tries to do to do that from the administrative side, and they spoke to the assemblies at the beginning of the year and how they talk about being an upstander and those types of things. But they also say, well, the follow through and the culture in the school doesn't necessarily reflect that aim, that aspiration from the students. And we talked about how students need to take more control of the culture of their school, because they outnumber everybody, but they're not a unified group, so to speak. There are many different communities within our school, within our student community, that we're trying to find ways to make them connect with one another. So on the faculty side, of course, there are many who have also said that they don't feel comfortable speaking up on these issues for a number of reasons in their school, whether it's backlash from parents or not feeling comfortable talking about the situation in general. So there's things on both sides that are salient for our students and for our faculty. Tara.
I don't know what to do about this, but it's just been something I've been thinking about and concerned about. Is our LGBTQ plus students at the elementary level? I know the high school and the middle school, they have clubs. I believe I understand there's clubs, but at the elementary level, I think those kids get lost. And I don't know what we can do to help support them. Like I had students tell me at the elementary level that, that they were gay. Somebody was teasing them, oh, I like a girl. That's ridiculous because I don't like girls like that. I like boys. And I'm like, okay, so I would support that child, and you shouldn't be teasing anybody anyway, that kind of a thing. And we would talk some more. Then like parents would call me or email me and say, thank you so much for listening to my child. But I don't know. I just don't know what to do about that. And I do worry about that because I don't want them to feel different or to feel silenced or to say, wait, I can't come out to like middle school because that's where there's a group of people that can support me. I mean, I just don't know what the answer is, but it is something I've been thinking about and something I am worried about.
Thank you, Tara. Wei?
Good evening. I sensed what Tara said. Actually, I would just follow on, say a little bit words. I think for elementary level, it's really tough because they're just so small. And then if they're going to stand out facing, it might make it even worse. So yeah, I totally agree with you. That's just hard to know how to say. But then to go back to what I originally wanted to say, because our agenda today, for the underserved, underserved community or like students, obviously we already done a great deal of focusing the English as second language. That's part, and then I can hear already some of the school like middle school or doing this amazing like world holiday thing. I think it's just fantastic. It is true that I find that all the program we did as direct experience as a immigrant mother of two, the little things such as if I go to my children's school to read a Chinese book, for example, that is such a pride for my children. My son would be absolutely so proud that day. And so as if there's holidays such as Lunar New Year coming up, if I go to his school or my daughter's school, not actually, my son in elementary level, he will be absolutely super proud. My daughter at the middle school level, she's secretly proud, but she said, I'm gonna be sick that day when you shows up in the farm board school. I mean, if Amba says performing, I'll be out. She said, she threatened. But it just say, if anything, the school or the teacher can think of that highly related to that particular children and their family, and then encourage them to bring out their own culture into their classroom, even for little things, bring a craft, bring a book, or bring a food or whatever, of course, under the school regulation. For that particular kid, that is something they're going to memorize for a long period of time. So these little things we should keep doing and should totally enhance more and more. I mean, a lot of things can be naturally solved, not necessarily have always to be sent out and accused that I'm not feeling well. You know, it's not feeling well is sometimes because they never have the chance to feel like they can be proud of where they come from, or they can be proud of little things that they can share to other people in the same classroom, in the same school. That's what I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Nina.
Wow, that's so wonderful. I think not to hear what you have to say, you're definitely making me think, not even just feeling proud, but feeling a sense of belonging, feeling a sense that you are with everybody else in the room and you're not like, you belong there. It's the best word I think to use for that. So thank you for sharing that. That's wonderful. I think another group, though, to just mention is the socioeconomic disparity that exists as well. And I think that's an area that it pretty much transcends all groups. I think, you know, even today, I mean, raising children today, it's expensive. And I was even telling my mom that it's harder than when I was a kid and she could just say no to buying certain things. But social media, all the trends, everything these kids have, and it's so costly for parents to try to keep up with the trends, that what's cool, what's not. And that in itself is so difficult for kids to fit in and to have that sense of belonging. And materials, unfortunately, have equated that as the kids get older. So family is really struggling to be able to feel that they can connect. Then there's, of course, the embarrassment that a lot of kids unfortunately feel in those situations. So, making sure that the buildings, that the school district in each building is providing different helping hands and things like that for families, so that those families can be able to meet the threshold that they feel that their kids are lacking from in areas that are just, especially given today and the way the economy is going for so many families and with the increasing costs for so many things, keeping up with the Joneses is even more difficult.
William.
Yeah, I think there's some great points being brought up here. Normally, when I think of students who are, underrepresented, or especially if they're new to the community and they don't feel a sense of comfort, it's not necessarily because of, they would say, perceived in staff reaching out, but I think students really need to be accepted into the student community. So we need to work on like a framework, because I think the students need to be responsible to a point as well, because there's only so much staff members can do to push forward. So we need some sort of framework in the student community, which at this point is incredibly challenging because there's many ways you could go about it. But I think, educating the student body generally about these issues, connecting clubs, especially many of our representative clubs who work to serve underrepresented groups, or larger student forums, something of that sort, so we can have the larger student body work together on these sort of issues rather than splintered groups coming out to work on issues. Because that's one thing I worked with when I was working with the student government, is I wanted to really see what, the elected students could do to look at the issues in the community. Contacting clubs. I brought up when we were doing the anti-hate rally last year, to assist in funding and those sort of things, just things to help out the general student body as a whole. And I really want to see that get pushed further than where it currently is.
Mike.
I was just gonna build off what Will was bringing up. Derek mentioned this in his opening. We talked about it. We're talking about the population of students, but it is a very diverse student population, even just from the point of view of we always assume, like, we at the high school level, we have so many kids that join the high school in high school or join the high school with a year or two in Farnsworth. So they're very new to what I would say is the Guilderland culture is. And we also know that it's very difficult to break into friend groups and feel accepted and to get to know, break the cliques that are naturally in every school building that are out there. And we've tried different things over the years to try to help those students, from, tours with some of our welcoming students to give them, for a week, to try to give them a sense of the building and the schedule, to having them in SOS homerooms so that they have an opportunity to participate in some activities and they're with a group of kids that tend to be, welcoming. And but to Will's point, I think the biggest part is, like, we've tried a lot of different things and it doesn't always work. And Derek was talking to a group of students, and my point of view is we need help from the students on this, of how do our students help other students who are new to our community, and I think that's a population that gets forgotten a lot of times, is the students who are brand new to Gilliland. And I think we got to keep, because a lot of times what we find is the students who struggle the most, whether it's academically, behaviorally, or socially, a lot of times they're our transfer students. So just a thought out there.
And Anika?
During our meeting today, there was someone else who brought that up, and he was also a transfer student. And he talked about how it was difficult for him to like come in and like make friends because everyone already had their own groups. But he mentioned that one of the ways he was able to branch out and actually join the Guilderland community was through the clubs. But he also found it difficult to fit into the clubs because he didn't really understand what the clubs like happened, and a lot of people are already friends within the clubs. So I feel like it would be really like important or interesting to do something with the clubs, and maybe like a club fair. I know we were talking about that.
Yeah. Across the board, we've been discussing issues that are more relational and social rather than like events that celebrate histories and cultures. I think there's a lot of programming going on at a lot of the schools that is very across the board, very multicultural, very range. But the comfortability is that day-to-day, everyday interaction where people seem to have difficulty interacting with people who are different from themselves or not from their group. And that is something that keeps popping up with every population, even from faculty to students. When I first came here, a lot of the faculty would say that there was almost a chill in the air about wanting to discuss some of these issues. And the areas where those issues were being discussed, like in Mr. Hahn's class in particular, there was a protocol in place, for civil conversations. And maybe I know that some districts have explored anti-retaliation policies if people adhere to certain protocols, so that people will feel comfortable holding these conversations and being able to discuss these issues. And you can put safeguards in place to make sure there are people there to participate and to assist with those types of things. May or may not be helpful. But the other piece, I was thinking about that piece on the faculty side because I saw it being suggested. Another thing that was suggested was that having people who are in the or training our social workers and psychologists, if they don't have background dealing with the specific stresses of people from underrepresented groups, to develop that sensitivity and awareness so that they can be a resource or be seen as a resource, because sometimes the students won't seek out people within their or don't feel like they have that trusted individual that will really understand where they're coming from. So that was another thought that was in place. And yeah, those are a couple of things that I wanted to make sure made it into the discussion.
Jody?
Derek, I just wanted to agree with you that it does seem as though it is more of a social thing than ever. And something that Nina said really made me think of, I have a student who told us that he wants to be white because all of his white peers have an iPhone. And so there's just all this intersectionality that's happening at the middle school, and I'm sure it's happening in all of the buildings where, you know, there's a race issue there, but there's also a status issue, and there's also a socioeconomic issue, and of course those things are intertwined. And I just think that that's part of what makes this so necessary, but at the same time, it's part of what makes it so hard and for teachers to understand, for us to know the right moves. And, you know, to your point earlier of teachers wanting to have those conversations, I have the sense that that's the case, but, you know, preparing us and teaching us how to have those conversations is going to be really important.
Nina.
Yeah, definitely hearing a lot of consistent themes here. And I think what goes back to, again, I know I mentioned this, I think already this year, but also maybe last year, Derek, it goes back to the tribe thing, right? It goes back to the feeling of connecting. And if you can't connect, then you can't relate. And I know I'm a kind of broken record on the circle groups, but I've done trainings with Circle, and it really tries to break that, those lines that are drawn in the sand. And, you know, as human beings, we inherently form these rankings and these groups, and that's the essence of bullying, right? I mean, it comes back to bullying, and whether the bullying is originating from some kind of popularity ranking that kids form in their own grades, for some way, or if it's based on a cultural disparity or religion or, you know, other factors. The bottom line is that there's not a connecting, and they're not feeling like they're part of the same group. And that's what, you know, I do agree that leaving it to students is helpful, but I think that students need our help. And I think that, you know, to Jody's point, that the teachers need help. And that's why professional trainers who are, you know, this is their job, is working with school districts. There's all kinds of resolution, there's trainings, there's restorative work, and there's the circle groups. I mean, there are programs out there that are even like, you know, there's some that you pay for, and there's some that are part of even OCFS, I believe, that can be brought in, that can offer these trainings to school districts that can address the issues that we're talking about. Obviously, yes, cultural responsiveness, that's something that we'd have to make sure that is being focused on as well. But what we're talking about is human nature and how we can break through what is just going to happen by natural, you know, rankings. I mean, it's since the dawn of time, right? That bullying is a thing that unfortunately human beings do to each other. I mean, look at the world, right? So I think that by that, to that point, I think that we need help, and we may need to not just be able to do this in-house. It may require real professionals to come in and work with our faculty and work with our kids to help teach them how to do this.
William.
Yeah, I think Nina brought up some great points there with bullying. And I think in many ways, some of the best ways you can combat these issues is, number one, with education. And then number two, I think collaboration is the best way, because a lot of the times hearing about like unsuccessful attempts to try and make students feel more comfortable is, I mentioned staff can't, there's some things that staff is going to be unable to do because the community just isn't going to, one person necessarily, especially for students, right? Coming from my perspective is, oh, they're just a staff member. It's just their job to be here. They don't care. So we're not going to listen to them. And I think that's why we need collaboration between student leadership and staff, and as well, if we want to get any professionals as well to collaborate this, because then we can get the best of every world possible, because you get the student experience, you get staff experience, professional experience, and I think that would allow to work better with trying to build a more community-based infrastructure rather than just having staff trying to assist students through the process, because students will listen to other students, because even though we may be in different cliques and stuff, you're still going to, you're still going to know a student is a student, and they are probably going to be more representative of another student's interests. So I think if we were to work together on that, the community would be more open to that sort of change if we allowed student representation and leadership in a process like this.
I agree. I think managing these processes is difficult, especially for leadership, because you're trying to move some pretty ingrained cultural values. Like circle training is a great way to introduce restorative justice activities and those types of things. But if the culture is like, no, we rather see somebody pay and we don't really want to do that social work stuff, or, you have to really get the community buy-in on a level to create this movement and do it with consistency. And that's why on the way to developing this infrastructure, we need to be able to protect the students and the staff and the people who are usually trying to lead this behavior from being, cut off before they get a chance to really express themselves, or while they're expressing themselves, become sacrificial lambs on the way to us shifting the culture. So it's really, how do we do it in a smooth fashion? I think William is right, and others who have talked about the need for collaboration, the need to move together and feel supported while we do it. And the next question becomes, how do we support people while we're building that infrastructure or trying to shift those attitudes and to become aware of them, because they will raise their head, and people have to have room to make mistakes so that they can learn and learn from those mistakes and move forward. So it's very touchy to plan this out, but necessary work. Hunter.
Yeah, I think I just wanted to also speak to and highlight your point of, we are a group of people who I think are very like-minded, who want to see things improve, who want to try to have a greater understanding of our students, of the community that we work in and live in and teach in and do all these things in. But I think it's important to also recognize that we might be very entrenched on our side of, we want to make things better, but there's going to be another side that is very entrenched in, this is how it's been done for 200 years, and this is how we're going to continue to do it. And just to recognize both sides, and again, that collaboration piece of, how do we find that way to come to the middle and compromise?
Definitely. It's tricky and it's challenging. I mean, every leader at our schools is, is shaking their head at that, because it is the balance that they always are trying to strike, and it's not an easy one. And especially, I think what I was told when I first came to the district, it's every other house, so I was always kept reminded that there's a range of points of view, and you have to be mindful of those as you're trying to move things forward. Tony. I think you're on mute.
I was just reflecting on 2 points. One is that I was fortunate enough to be a transfer student in high school. It didn't seem fortunate at the time. I went from one kind of extreme kind of culture to a different one, and survived it and ended up with a wonderful experience, largely because a couple of students and a couple of teachers hooked me. they brought me in, and provided access to that school community. Otherwise, I don't know what would have happened. And that kind of mechanism, I think, is really powerful, and not that hard to do if you recognize as a teacher or a school administrator that's part of the process. That has to happen to students that are coming in from the outside that aren't connected. Somebody has to connect them. It's not a process that falls down out of the sky. It's something that people do. And from what I hear in this discussion today, lots of folks are concerned about that. But I only heard of one mechanism. I think Nina was talking about circle business. I mean, that's a device, and somehow or other you need a device or devices that people know about and are willing to use. And who's responsible for it? For example, I was thinking, who in Farnsworth, for example, is responsible for inclusion? Is there anybody there who can say, okay, me, I'm the guy to call if there's an inclusion issue? No. If there's a discipline issue, yeah, you know who can hold your hand. If something's wrong with the water supply, there's somebody who will hold their hand. But is there anybody who call me? I'm the inclusion guy. I mean, in a way, that's an administrative issue that may be difficult to do because of some of the things that Hunter just mentioned about resistance, people are not being ready to think of their job that way, or to recognize how important it is for a whole category of kids. But it seems to me that tools, mechanisms like that, assignment of responsibility, that's part of the puzzle in figuring out how to make inclusion work in a really complicated environment. I mean, I wouldn't begin, if I were an anthropologist and somebody told me, go in and do a cultural mapping of Guilderland High School. I'd say, no, I don't think so. That's too big a job. I wouldn't even know where to begin. But that's the reality that folks are dealing with. And that's why the sort of implementing very specific things that people can relate to and use is an important part of dealing with that mess out there of student culture.
William.
I think Tony brought up a great point here, because I too came to the district in 2023. I lived in the state of Montana originally for 10 years, and then I moved here start of freshman year. And it was tough. The first 2 months were quite rough because I think the staff were great, because I personally, as a Caucasian male, I had it, I would imagine, a lot easier than perhaps many other students have it. But even then, I think really what got me in the community was the students, because when they reached out to me, I was really able to connect and push forward, which is why I've been so heavy in this conversation about pushing student responsibility, because my belief is if you give a student responsibility to do something, they will do it. Which is why, in our subcommittees, we're so talkative and we have so many ideas and we really want to push to get stuff done. And that's also my approach for inclusion, because, mentioning the idea of who's someone who would be in charge of inclusion. And I think slightly radical approach. I think students could do it, right? I think having inbuilt student legislation, having students be able to meet up in a forum or a community and have them decide, and giving them the responsibility to push for themselves, I think could see some really great success.
Excellent. Thank you, William. Lily.
I just wanted to touch on what everyone was kind of saying today. like what Will was saying, I feel like it's really important to have students reach out, whether it's like a new student joining a sport or a new club. I think it's like very monumental that not only teachers and staff reaching out, but students, because I feel like students connect better with students, and that's how you get more connection throughout the school and feel more comfortable. And even just having conversations like these with some students, along with many staff members and outside like people, it really helps open up and create a more welcoming environment. So I feel like having these tough conversations with some students at school, or even like more club officers or members, would allow for like more of an inclusive type of responsibility and like formality within our school.
Thank you, Lily. Tara.
So I agree with everything Tony, Will, and Lily said, but I'd like to go back to what Nina was talking about with the circle. I mean, all it takes is one teacher to try it and do it. And I think this is something that, and I don't know, my daughter was part of Civil Conversations, and Mitch Hahn kind of did the circle. I don't even think he realized what it was. He didn't call it that, I don't think, but he did it. And it was great. And I think we need to do teachers, and again, and I understand the pressures of teaching the elementary. We have a very short day. So, you got to get all of these, all the academic stuff in. But if kids aren't connecting, if kids aren't, interacting with each other, if kids are struggling emotionally, they're not going to learn all that other stuff. And I think to build community, we need to do those circle type activities. And if we need to go to an organization to say, hey, how do we do this? Like, hey, I'm retired. I could go, for some training. I don't mind. Me and Tony will take care of it. We could go for training. I don't mind doing that. I just think it sounds like such a great and very concrete idea that you could take into a classroom. So that's all I want to say.
Nina.
Yeah, I know I talked a lot today, so I'll make it brief. But Tara, I appreciate that, and Tony and Will and Lily, I also appreciate your points are to that end. In terms of kids standing up and taking these roles, I want to again say they need the training. Everybody needs the training, and it's a great idea that kids should be the ones to do the outreach. You have to teach students how to do that, and I have been trained with Circle, so I can speak to it a little bit. It is about conversations, but it's initiated by an activator, and an activator is something physical. Why? Because we humans are physical. As I teach, I have my kids who are antsy get up and do things in the room to help out with maps or volunteer because they need that. All of us need that. Once we can get through the physical of things, we're able to break through and get to the emotional part. So you can't just, say to kids, okay, you're going to be the one to go do this. Again, they're still trapped within the levels of the social rankings that have been established and are deeply rooted in our kids' psyches. So if we're really going to do this right, we need the professional assistance to do it. There's a lot of research on Circle. Like I said, I could speak on it for a while. I really think there's a lot of truth to it. It does hearken to the talk about anthropological studies, Tony, 100%. That's where it's rooted in. So if we're going to, whether or not it's that, I'm not, hung up on it too much that I can't put it aside and try something else. But I think that we need training, and that's including the kids.
Way.
That sounds getting more and more interesting. I want to first of all comment on what Lily says. This sounds really, really good, and really proud as how our high schoolers can get to so wonderful, just simply wonderful. And then I like just to offer Tara some information. So if you wanted to know about the cultural side of Taiwan, China, Korean, India, Indonesia, Philippines, let me know, because I can offer certainly in either information or performer or some other cultural aspect on it.
Yeah. And there are a lot of training opportunities that students and faculty are taking advantage of in our in our district. I want I don't want people to think that that's not being done. Our students initiated wanting to go into classrooms and teach lessons on diversity. It was acknowledged they needed training, so we went to Educate and Empower, and now we have a 2-day training, 2.5-day training. Students signed up; they're committed to doing it. But these initiatives, the one thing I noticed about these initiatives, someone took ownership, and we need a consistency of follow through in order to establish something, and we have to build the buy-in to get a group. It'd be nice to have a group of people invested in that type of training, and I'm sure they'll get support to do that. We just have to be able to cultivate an atmosphere where we can settle on something that will work for a large number of our faculty and get that we can do that training. We've attempted sticks and stones training with didn't get the traction that we wanted, but we do have some people in the district who are trained in that. We got people who are trained in things, but we need something that's going to get the buy-in across the board, and we're still working on that. And that's a challenge as you try to change the culture and shift the culture. You need that group of consistent people who are going to, follow through on the training and then be able to implement it in their thing. Mitch Hahn has a following for a reason. He's built that from the ground up, and it reflects that. I think we have groups like Sources of Strength and those type of things that have been built by people who are committed enough to follow through and train people, and now that's a huge program with over 200 student mentors. So in the areas where we do have these things, there's been some ingredients that have been consistent, and that's what we're looking to do, is to find that level of ground where we can continue that in a way that serves us better on the student level and on the faculty level. I think there's been a lot of great suggestions tonight. We got a lot of notes to bring us forward in food for thought. I'm very appreciative to everyone who shared their opinion and their perspective. And we're going to definitely follow up on those things and see what we can gain some traction with in our district and on these levels, and be able to support those folks doing those things. So thank you for your participation tonight. You can never talk too much. Nobody played the wrap it up music tonight. I think just getting your thought complete and getting it out there so that we can follow through on it and we have that information is extremely important. So thank each of you for your insight and input tonight. And thank you for holding this conversation. And I will put the meeting back in the hands of the folks who are running it, the chair.
All right, with that, and thank you for your discussion and your time this evening. It's been very much appreciated. As Derek said, we'll continue to move forward on this topic because it's important to all of us, as demonstrated by the length of this conversation. So thank you. Just a reminder, I believe, Derek, our subcommittee meeting is next week, correct?
Yes.
On the 21st. Okay. And then our next full DEI meeting is Wednesday, February 11th. I want to thank you all and have yourself a wonderful rest of your evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Thank you for the conversation. Good night.
I'm going to measure my recording here.